Hey everyone, my name is Leanne and today I'm going to be telling you about the massive pile of books that I have acquired over the winter Christmas period. Let me explain why I have so many books. I don't owe you guys an explanation, I don't owe myself an explanation, but there are reasons for this. First of all, in winter we have December, and in December we have Christmas and my birthday. That means people very kindly gift me books. So that's reason number one. Reason number two is that I work in a bookshop and for Christmas I had a 50% discount and I don't have any self-control. Anyways, I'm not going to tell you which books that I got from my work and which ones I didn't, but anyway, let's just crack on with the books. There are two little books to start off with, the first of which is Race by Toni Morrison, and this is part of the Vintage mini-series. These are a wonderfully, beautifully produced series of books that each one of these books takes a look at a different theme. Some of them more concrete ideas than others, some a lot more abstract ideas, but they each have a selection of writing from the particular author on the particular theme. And this book on Race by Toni Morrison features sections from her books The Song of Solomon, The Bluest Eye, and Beloved. But I'm really looking forward to this one and being able to dip my toes in some of Toni Morrison's other work that I've not tried out yet. Next up I have a Little Black Classic, and it's been quite a while since I hauled a Little Black Classic, but I have George Eliot's The Lifted Veil. These are a wonderful series of books that are published by Penguin that feature short stories, novellas and long-form poems. I love George Eliot, if you didn't already know that. I think she's great. And this was actually the cover design of The Lifted Veil that I liked the most out of all the ones that are available. This is like a Victorian horror novel. It has a lot to do with fate and clairvoyance. Isn't clairvoyance a wonderful word? It has a lot to do with the possibility of life after death. These are a wonderful series of books that are published by Penguin that feature short stories, novellas and long-form poems, which is kind of different from anything I've read from George Eliot before, so I'm really looking forward to trying this one out. Next up I have a couple of short story collections. The first of those is Lust by Roald Dahl. Yes, the Roald Dahl of Matilda and George's Marvelous Medicine, SEO Trot, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. That guy wrote about lust. These are 10 tales of maddening lust that reveal the dark side of human nature. This is also published by Penguin and it is part of a 4-book series of Roald Dahl books with stories from different themes. So we have lust, we have madness, cruelty and deception. I absolutely loved Roald Dahl's stories when I was a kid, so it'll be really interesting to see what his adult fiction is like. Oh boy. This next one's a chunkster. So, I have an anthology of short stories called Ghost, 100 stories to read with the lights on, chosen by Louise Welsh. And the print in it is really small. So, these are 100 spooky ghost stories from a whole bunch of different writers. To name just a few of the people on the back, we have Kate Atkinson, Margaret Atwood, Angela Carter, Arthur Conan Doyle, Charles Dickens, Charlotte Perkins Gilman, Zora Neale Hurston, Henry James, Stephen King, Jackie Kay. That's just a few of the names on the back of this book. Lots of writers that I have read before, lots of writers that I haven't read before but would like to, lots of writers that I've not even heard of. This book is really heavy, so I'm going to put it down now. Anyways, I'm really excited to dip in and out of this one, particularly when we get to like September, October kind of time, when things get a little bit spooky. I have one collection of poetry to talk about, and that is Joe Shapcott's Of Mutability. I picked this up on a bit of a whim because I absolutely love the Faber and Faber poetry collections. I think they are published beautifully, and I've never read any Joe Shapcott before. This is a poetry collection about mortality and the nature of change. It is about the body and the natural world and the shifting relationships between people. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to trying out this poetry collection and seeing if I found a new favourite poet. Next up I have Brian Field's Dancing at Lunasa, which is just a beautifully put together play. If you put a book in this colour, I'm gonna buy it. But this is a play published by Faber and Faber, and it is set in County Donegal in Ireland in 1936. Bundy family, which is made up of 5 sisters whose ages range from I believe 26 to 40, and they are barely making ends meet. There are also 2 male members of the household. We have the brother Jack, who's a missionary priest, and the 7-year-old child of the youngest sister. This play follows 2 days in their life, and it invokes the interior landscape of all these individuals. But it also evokes the wide wider landscape which they are part of. I'm going to be reading predominantly Irish books in the month of March as part of an Irish readathon, so I'm going to hold off on reading this one until then. Next up, I have another book by an Irish writer, and that is Decrescendo by Jerry Brennan, and I was contacted by the publisher about this one and I said yes, I would love a review copy. This is a really lyrical novel and I believe it has really stunningly beautiful language in it. It is about politics and philosophy, it is about love and death, and I don't know a huge amount about it other than that. But what really sold this novel to me was the emphasis on the really lyrical language that is going to be used into it. So I'm looking forward to getting to this one and seeing what I think of it. Next up, I have a YA thriller, and that is Far From You by Tess Sharp. The reason I picked this up was I heard the girls from the Girls Sex 101 book club. So that is Emma, and Joss, and I will leave their channels linked down below. This is a YA thriller about a girl whose best friend has been murdered. I wanted to read more thrillers in 2018 because I discovered there's something that I actually quite enjoy. And while the girls over at the Girls Sex 101 book club didn't think this was the most amazing book ever, I was really drawn in by the bisexual representation in this book. So that's the reason I picked it up. I just want to see myself in some books, guys. Is that so much to ask? This one is published by Orion. The next book I'm going to talk about is Jamaica Inn by Daphne du Maurier, and this is part of the Virago Modern Classics series. I picked this up entirely because Lauren from Lauren in the Books keeps going on about Daphne du Maurier, and I was like, right, I'm gonna find out what all the hype is about. But I don't actually know that much about this book, so I'm gonna read you the blurb. Her mother's dying request takes Mary Yellen on a sad journey across the bleak moorland of Cornwall to reach Jamaica Inn, the home of her Aunt Patience. With the coachman's warning echoing in her memory, Mary arrives at a dismal place to find Patience a changed woman, cowering from her overbearing husband, Josh Merrill. Affected by the inn's brooding power, Mary is thwarted in her intention to reform her aunt and unwillingly drawn into the dark deeds of Joss and his accomplices. And, as she struggles with events beyond her control, Mary is further thrown by her feelings for a man she dare not trust. Sounds very spooky, gothic, creepy. It reminds me kind of like Jane Eyre and Wuthering Heights, which aren't my favourite books in the world by any means, but hopefully I will enjoy this one a lot more. Next up, I have a YA book that is published by Atom, and that is Another Place by Matthew Crowe. So this is set in a seaside town and is about a 16-year-old girl who is coming home from hospital after her escalating depression left her unable to cope. We also look at Sarah, another teenage girl who has disappeared. She had a bad reputation around town, but her disappearance has really shook this small town. A lot of small town local secrets and scandals begin to surface due to the police investigation around her disappearance. But we discover that these two girls had a secret friendship and that Claudette may know some things about Sarah that hold the key to her disappearance. I've not actually heard anyone on BookTube ever talk about this book before, so I'd be interested to know if you have actually read this before, and I would really appreciate if you left your thoughts down below in the comments. The next book I have is King's Cage by Victoria Aveyard, and this is the third book in the Red Queen series. I read the first two books in this series, really enjoyed the first one, thought the second one was pretty weak, so I'm really interested to see what I think of this third and penultimate book in this series. This is about a world that is divided into people that have red blood and silver blood. Those that have red blood don't have any special powers or anything, and they are a marginalized group in this society, and then the people who have silver blood have a lot of special or magical powers. But our protagonist is Mare Barrow, who is someone who has red blood and has magical powers. This series of books looks at how that shakes up the society and the Red Rebellion. I'm a little bit tired of books now that have like allegory for difference and marginalized groups, but as I did quite enjoy the first book in this series, I'm interested to see how it ends. If I don't enjoy this one, then I probably won't be picking up the final book in the series. I did have an e-arc of this, but I did want to own a physical copy of this series because somehow these books have come to me at really significant moments of my life. Like, I really remember where I was and what I was doing when I read the first two books. So in that sense, they do mean a little bit to me. But yeah, I'm excited to see whether this one pulls the series back for me, and it is published by Orion. Next up, I have a book that has a really beautiful cover and a really beautiful premise, and that is The Keeper of Lost Things by Ruth Hogan. This was published by Two Roads, which is a publisher that I've really come to discover in the past year or so, and I really love what they do. Dave from Wild Reads has really raved about this book book, so I'm really looking forward to it. The premise sounds really interesting. It is about Anthony Pardew, who's a man who has spent half of his life trying to collect things, trying to collect lost objects. He realizes that he is running out of time, and he leaves all of these lost objects to his assistant Laura, who he trusts to reunite these lost objects with their rightful owners. That premise just sounds fascinating. It sounds wonderful. It sounds so intriguing. It sounds really wholesome. I'm really looking forward to reading this book, and I'm also really looking forward to taking pictures of this book, because look at how stunning it is. Next up, I have a series of books, and they are the Noughts and Crosses sequence by Mallory Blackman. This series is made up of Noughts and Crosses, Knife Edge, Checkmate, and Double Cross. And they're just gorgeous. Look at them. That's the reason I decided to pick up this box set. It came as a box set. I've never seen these covers before. They're published by Penguin, and I just thought they were utterly gorgeous. This first book, Noughts and Crosses, looks at the friendship between two characters called Sephi and Callum. They have been best friends since childhood, but a romance begins to build between the pair, but that's not possible in the society that they live in, which is full of racism and prejudice. This is a really highly praised series of books. As far as I know, it deals with racism in a really compelling and important and interesting and intelligent way. It's definitely one that I'm going to be starting in 2018. Whether I finish it in 2018 is another matter, but I'm definitely going to start. Next up, I have quite a bit of non-fiction, and I'm going to start with these beautiful books by Skye Alexander. These are published by Simon & Schuster, and they are books about the myths, legends, and lore around fairies, unicorns, and mermaids. I just thought these were so beautiful, and I couldn't resist picking them up. They're stunning. If you want to start learning more about mythology and where these fascinating, fantastical elements and creatures, where they come from, what are their origins, and how they have been depicted throughout culture and literature through the age. I'm particularly interested in this one about mermaids. I'm fascinated by mermaids. And I think it might be quite an interesting one to read around the time that Louise O'Neill's novel about, it's a retelling of The Little Mermaid. I love The Little Mermaid, and I was super excited when I found out my favourite author was doing a retelling of that story. I love the original Hans Christian Andersen one, and I love the Disney adaptation, and I'm sure I'm going to love Louise's version, and I think this would be a really interesting one to read around the same time as reading that. These books have beautiful illustrations as well, so I'm really excited. And I think they'll be quite different to what I normally read when it comes to non-fiction as well. I normally read books like this. This is Chavs by Owen Jones. So this is a book about the demonisation of the working class in the UK. You may know who Owen Jones is. He also has a YouTube channel, but he is a columnist from The Guardian. He's really outspoken about a number of political issues. There is a huge class divide in the UK, and it wasn't something I was necessarily aware of before I moved here, and I don't know if that's because I definitely think in the UK there's more of a big deal and emphasis made around class than there is in Ireland. Like, don't get me wrong, there's definitely a class divide in Ireland, but it seems a lot more culturally ingrained in the UK. I don't know if it's that, or I don't know if it's just I wasn't aware of class until I became an adult, and I have spent the majority of my adult life in the UK. Or maybe there's a combination of both, but as I said, there's definitely a massive class divide in the UK, and this is a book about that, and it's about the demonisation of the working class. It's about how they're presented in the media. I've heard a lot of good things about this one. It's been a book that's been on my radar for years, so I'm really looking forward to finally getting to it. And this one is published by Verso Books. Next up, I have a small memoir that I was given for my birthday. That is I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings by Maya Angelou, and this edition is published by Ballantine Books. Maya Angelou has a whole series of memoirs, and I believe this is the first one in her series of memoirs, and it looks at her childhood. It's about prejudice, it's about racism, it is about gender, it's about childhood. I think Maya Angelou is a really important figure in literary history, particularly that of women of colour. So I think this memoir, alongside the following memoirs that she has, are going to be really important reads. So yes, very much looking forward to this one. Next up, I have a stunning book that I was given for Christmas, actually by the same people who gave me I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings for my birthday. But I have the Book of Forgotten Authors by Christopher Fowler, and this book is gorgeous. As I said, if you print a book in this colour, I'm gonna want it, and it also has beautiful gold foiling on the title. This is published by River Run, and I Always love everything that River Run do. But this is about 99 forgotten authors who kind of faded into obscurity, and is about what they wrote that was unforgettable yet somehow has become forgotten. I think this is going to be such an interesting read. I think it's going to be a great way of discovering new authors. The whole premise of this book is so exciting to me. So I'm really looking forward to getting to this one. And again, it's one that I'm looking forward to taking pictures of because it's just beautiful. Next I have two kind of similar books, the first of which is Sue Perkins' Spectacles. I already have a e-reader copy of this, an ebook, that's what those are called. I already have an ebook copy of this, but I really wanted to own a physical one because I just did, okay? I think it is partially, again, to do with how beautiful this cover is, but this is Sue Perkins' memoir. You may know her from a number of different British TV shows and documentaries, but what she is most famous for is presenting the Great British Bake Off alongside Mel Giedroyc. I was planning on reading this for Nonfiction November, but I didn't get around to it, unfortunately, despite everyone telling me how fantastic it was. That's probably why I picked up a physical copy of it, because I'm pretty certain I'm gonna love it. And also I will be a lot more motivated to read it if I've got a physical copy, because that's just who I am as a person. I'm flawed, I'm sorry. The next book I have is Susan Cowman's Cheer Up Love, Adventures in Depressions with the Crab of Hate. This one is published by Two Roads, and as I said, I just love everything that Two Roads do. Susan Cowman is a Scottish... I've always really loved her comedy, and I've wanted to read this book for a really long time. But my boyfriend got this one for my birthday, and I'm so happy about it. And the reason why this was a particularly good pick from him was because I have been obsessed with Susan Cowman. She was on the most recent series of Strictly Come Dancing, and I love Strictly Come Dancing, and she was partnered with my favourite professional dancer, who is Kevin Clifton. Gutted when they were knocked out of the competition, but I was so proud of them both. This is Susan Cowman's non-fiction book about depression, but I also think it'll be a really funny book because obviously she's a comedian. I think it's going to be really poignant and informative, and I think I'm going to get to this one really soon. Next up I have Helen Russell's The Year of Living Danish. This is about Helen Russell and her moving to Denmark and how that affects her life and the things she learns about living Danishly. This is going to be a really interesting one. It's going to be really great to learn about a new country. Really looking forward to it. Next up I have Paul Kalanithe's When Breath Becomes Air, and this is a memoir that has been really highly praised. It follows a 36-year-old man who has been training to become a neurosurgeon for a decade, but then he is diagnosed with inoperable lung cancer. It looks at how he deals with going from becoming a doctor to becoming a patient who is struggling to live. I think this is going to be a really touching book, at times a really difficult book. It's a really important one as well. So yeah, I acquired a lot of books over the winter Christmas period. I still have some like book vouchers and stuff that I was given for Christmas that I want to spend, but I'm probably going to wait to around March time to use those because there are a lot of new releases coming out in March that I'm really excited for. Let me know down below if you have any thoughts about any of these books, if you're interested in picking them up. If you've already read some of these and have thoughts on them, do let me know them down below. I hope you're having a wonderful day. I hope your reading in 2018 is going well thus far, and I will talk to you guys in my next video.